Now, yesterday afternoon, though, as we were talking on the show, in fact, I think it was about 1 o'clock, just as the show finished, Labour's leader, Chris Hipkins, and their finance spokesman, Barbara Edmonds, were releasing the very first of Labour's economic policies, which they hope will do two things. One, convince us to vote for the next election, which is always quite important. And the second one is get New Zealand out of the economic funk that it's in at the moment, or at least it be a step in the path of doing so. They announced their future fund announcement in Auckland, and as a consequence of that, there has been quite a bit of commentary. So I'm playing fair this morning. I've gone and found somebody who would know something about this, and that is Infometrics Chief Forecaster, Gareth Kiernan, and he joins us now. Gareth, lovely to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, pleasure to be here, Michael.
Well, you've looked at it. Just before we get to the announcement, we got to 3% this week. That's our inflation. We're kept alive, it would appear, mostly by our agricultural sector and I think by tourism. The dairy sector's doing well, but so is red meat, as you know. But the shoots of growth in the sort of Aucklands and Wellingtons and Christchurch are not so evident. Yesterday's announcement, the Future Fund announcement, was meant to suggest that Labour have a different or alternative pathway to getting the New Zealand economy working again. Can you explain its primary features, please, Gareth?
I'll do my best. I mean, they were a bit light on details and seem to be a little bit confused in terms of exactly what they're trying to aim to do with the policy. But essentially, I mean, the core of it seems to be that they want to set up a capital fund. Initially, I think, injecting $200 million into that and then tying up the state-owned enterprises in there as well so that the dividends that come out of those state-owned enterprises, such as the electricity companies, for example, then get reinvested into this fund. And the purpose of the fund, as far as I can tell, basically they want to say, look, New Zealand businesses are apparently starved of capital, have trouble accessing that capital, and so we want to provide this fund as an opportunity for New Zealand businesses to have access so that they can grow and expand and effectively, help the New Zealand economy to grow over the medium term.
So when they draw upon this capital fund, presumably New Zealand private sector, is that for the point, and would that be at an interest rate? Or is it meant to be a substitute for banks and international investors who would seek one?
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the questions I'm not entirely sure what the answer is to. It seems to me more along the lines of a sort of a capital injection into businesses rather than a sort of a borrowing fund per se. It's not clear out the other side of that whether that money gets recycled, and we've seen that with take a venture capital fund, for example, and the government has one of those in place already. They will identify businesses that are startups and very small businesses that are looking to grow and maybe admittedly are struggling to access capital there. So they put the money in there. The business. Some of them will be successful, of course, some of them will not. The ones that are successful, presumably you sell out the stake at some point in the future. But it's not clear with this fund. Presumably they're not going to sort of double up in terms of venture capital. So it may well just be that they're sort of looking to grow the government's sort of overall pie of assets they own over time. And they did make the comment, which I found slightly encouraging, tax can't be the government's only source of income. So maybe they're looking to generate some revenue from it over the medium term as well.
Well, that was the interesting part of yesterday's announcement to me because you say it was light on detail. Mate, was there any in there at all? I mean, when they were asked, as I understand it, Gareth, to say, well, which are the companies or which are the dividends that are going to go in there, they didn't name any of them. In fact, specifically stayed away from doing so. Does that strike you as very transparent?
Commercial sensitivities, apparently.
Yes, I know commercial sensitivity. I mean, it was cited as the reason. Are you joking?
I mean, for me, it's a little bit of a continuation of what we often see in politics, where governments or politicians have answers that are looking for a question or looking for a problem to solve. They've gone, oh, how about this? They point towards Singapore and go, look at the success of the Singapore Fund. And, we want to be associated with Singapore because how successful have they been over the last sort of 60 years in growing their economy and becoming more prosperous and all that sort of thing. But then actually translating that through into, what are we trying to achieve here in New Zealand? What are the details around it? That's where the sort of, like you say, the lack of detail starts to become horribly apparent.
Okay, next question. And the other question, as soon as I saw that, I was going, well, that's strange. You won't tell us what you're going to put in there, yet you own it apparently because it's commercially sensitive. And as you've just said in your preamble, Gareth, obviously companies are going to go in there, or at least the 50% shareholdings for 3 of the gentailers. Listen, I'm assuming that those SOEs and companies that the government own, of which the dividends will go into to create this fund, they give their money, to the government, yes? So there's going to have to be a alternative to the government's taxation revenue to make up for the sums that it no longer is going to be able to gain, isn't it?
And that's, for me, another one of the keys. Nothing, as they say in economics, there's no free lunch. What is the opportunity cost of this money? Would we be better to pay down debt? Or would we be better to cut taxes? That's if there's spare money going around. Or alternatively, like you say, it may well be that there needs to be revenue coming in from elsewhere to make up for the sort of lack of dividend from the electricity companies, as example, which would otherwise be going into the general government coffers and, financing other stuff, whether it's health or education, whatever spending it might be, that money has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, but then the other thing that struck me as well was there's an argument that our gentailers haven't done their job in terms of creating capacity because the government is the dead hand of ownership, if you like. And as we know, in the last month or so, again, another sort of damp announcement from the central government, this government, saying, well, if you need any more money, go for your life, come to us with a proposal. Well, if that's the case, then the dividend return to the government for future years when they need to spend money on building capacity is going to be reduced, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, one of the things that you can potentially do as a business with your profits is effectively reinvest them. And if that is in expanding your generation capacity as an electricity company, that may well be a perfectly good, valid, necessary option given some of the outcomes we've seen in terms of that energy market over the last 12 to 24 months as well. So, yeah, there's kind of a sense there they may well be undermining other parts of the sort of government portfolio if this is the path they're going to go down.
Okay. Now, was there, from an economics point of view, from you're an expert commentator, obviously, this is important to you. This is your job in a funny sort of way, Gareth. Was there anything in yesterday's announcement that gave you hope that it's going to kickstart the economy in the future or create a positive difference?
Apart from the sort of tenuous comparison to Singapore, not really. The only other sort of slight positive I could take out of it was at least they were putting it in the sort of guardianship of someone independent. The super fund was sort of touted as a possible example in terms of those people looking after that, rather than letting the politicians pick winners, because that is almost never successful, given politicians not always experts across sort of how businesses operate, and often a little bit subject to lobbying and the loudest sort of squeaky wheels as well. So, look, for me, it does come back to the question: is there actually something fundamentally wrong with the market as it stands? Do New Zealand businesses really struggle to access adequate capital? Or is it just more a case that, we sort of build the business up to a certain size, we sell it off, and then what do we do with the money? Is it that we go and then start to create another business, which would be a great outcome, or do we just go, well, that was great, now I've got the house and the car and I'm just going to sit back and relax? And sometimes I feel that's how the New Zealand economy operates, and why we're sort of, in some senses, stuck in being an economy of small to medium businesses, and then end up selling off to these sort of overseas multinationals, and then the profits are lost forever, rightly or wrong. So sometimes I think we just can't believe that someone would want to pay us that much money for something, and we take the money and run.